Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two wonderful poets with us today, Richard Modiano and Puma Perl. Richard will read first and then Puma. While a resident of New York City, Richard Modiano became active in the literary community connected to the Poetry Project, where he came to know Gregory Corso, Allen Ginsberg, Anne Waldman, William S. Burroughs, and Ted Berrigan. In 2001, he was a programmer at Beyond Broke Literary Arts Center, joined the Board of Trustees in 2006, and from 2010 to 2019, he served as executive director. The Huffington Post named him as one of 200 people doing the most to promote poetry in the United States. Modiano is a winner of the 2012 Joe Hill Prize for Labor Poetry and is a Pushcart Prize nominee. Here's a superlative poet, Richard Modiano.
Thank you, Harry. I made a trip to Japan in the 1990s, and I wrote a couple of poems about that. Gaijin, usually translated as foreigner, literally outside person or outsider. Hiked into western foothills of Heian-kyo. Leave the path, a shortcut through the bamboo grove, and out the other side. Someone's farm. Stop to rest, sit on a stone not far from a thatched roof house. On the porch, a young girl dressed in t-shirt and mompe, pantaloon-like pants, perches on a wooden crate of empty beer bottles. The tender points of her breast can be seen through the thin fabric of her t-shirt. A medallion gleams in the hollow of her throat, a tiny disc frozen in silver. She is perhaps 12. It can only be her mother beside her, a sun-bronzed, compact woman with braided black hair covered by a straw coolie hat. Mama is peeling daikon, big white radishes. She saves the leafy heads in the shallow basket at her feet, pauses to wipe sweat from her brow with a pale pink cloth. The young girl has a can of green tea, but she hasn't drunk much of it. She is worried about something. It can be seen in the slump of her shoulders and the sprawl of her thin legs. Several times her eyes shimmer with tears she is just able to control. When she looks up, it becomes clear that she is older than she appeared. At first, maybe 13 or 14. An air of naivete and awkwardness of limb and gesture makes her seem younger. She fidgets and at last says, "Ka-chan, Mama." "Nani, what?" The mother's voice seems a beat too slow. It drags itself reluctantly out past her lips. "Ka-san, is Ichiro just smoke and ashes?" Mama is silent, searching for an answer that will satisfy and comfort. "Chotto mite," she says, looking in my direction. "Gaijin dakara." Mother and daughter see me sitting on the stone in the break of the bamboo grove. I stand up now, bow slightly. They bow back deeply. "Shusuri desu ka? Nagai aida rutte chotto yasumun desu kedo," I answer in awkward Japanese. "I beg your pardon, but I've just been walking for a long time and took a rest here." Their faces are now masks, blandly and shyly friendly for the sake of the gaijin. They will offer me hospitality, a can of cold tea maybe, but I won't accept. Under the blazing blue bowl of the sky, the daughter's eyes are downcast, wanting me to be gone. I nod, turn, and walk back into the bamboo thicket, a gaijin ghost. From another trip, Nazo Nazo, a bar in Hiroshima. A girl bar with red neon called Riddle, Nazo Nazo. The young woman took a seat on the bar stool next to me. "Nihongo wa daijoubu?" she asked me. Daijoubu yo." A blast of cool air chilled the sweat on my face and carried her scent. She smelled good, but I noticed the mama-san behind the bar. Why did she name the bar Riddle? The mama-san answers, "It sounds exotic, and it seems to pose a question about life." She was 8 when the bomb killed her mother and sister. She still carries scars from the glass that slashed her body. More recently, during the COVID lockdown, I had insomnia from time to time, and I had to get out of the house. And the safest time to do it seemed to be at night. Saw the red cigarette glow in the cop's mouth, and I hurried on. He must have been on a break with his partner, and I'm walking at this late hour in the deserted park. I just couldn't sleep. No ill intent, just insomnia. I feel like I have sneak thief, prowler written all over me. How silent they are, these cops, with men with guns, seeing me quicken my pace. What did I do wrong? Under the ghastly light of the halogen lamps, my misshapen shadow, somehow monstrous. I'm trotting now out of the park, back to the street. My breath in the chill night air and out of the sight of the cops. Once I'm on the street again, I feel human. How do you want to die? Hanging from a rafter with the stool kicked on the floor beneath you? From an overdose of sleeping pills, like an actress or a fed-up housewife? Opening your arteries with a razor in a hot bath so you won't shake so much when the warmth leaves your body? All at once, in a spatter of brains and bones on the concrete foot of the high rise where you work, or in increments, installment by installment, with cigarettes and saturated fat and air pollution, high blood pressure, radiation, toxins in the water, carcinogenic sugar substitutes, and cell phones. Do you want certainty, gun to your temple, or do you play the lottery? Driving on the freeway stoned out of your mind, having unprotected sex with strangers, paying taxes to a government that might send the police to your door with guns in their hands. Or perhaps you're getting paid for them. How much are you worth per hour? Do you wash dishes for minimum wage? Give and receive orders for a manager's salary? Fight your way to the top to get a fair price for your life? Or are you buying it? Do you purchase it in single servings, buying yourself a taste whenever you can with alcohol, cocaine, heroin, prostitutes, action movies, video games, television, whatever it takes to go blank for an instant? Do you sometimes long to cut right to the inevitable, flinging yourself into the abyss of some addiction, absolute negation of everything you've ever wanted, everything that has disappointed you? Do you savor every drop, stretching out as far as you can, a moderate dose every day for the rest of your life, with health insurance to make sure you don't miss out on a single hour? Or are you ready to get it all over with? Consummate the affair with one defiant gesture, flaunting your disdain for the meaningless tragedies of this world as you go down in a swarm of bullets. Or maybe it's not death you're after all. Maybe it's something else, but what else is there? Pardon my cat. She always comes around on new things and gets in the way. When the world ends, white dust will fill the air like the curtain at the end of a play. A rain of desperate bodies will fall from the windows of burning buildings, drumming the concrete below. Men with splinters in their eyes, with streets choked with debris. Women clutching babies will pick through the rubble and tear out their hair. Our generation will go to its grave shouting its last words into a cell phone. Or perhaps it will arrive as a thief in the night, step by invisible step. Factories will disappear overseas, and corporations will vanish into thin air, taking jobs and retirement funds with them. Cities dying from the inside will spread like ringworm, the shrapnel spray of suburbs slicing through forest and field. Wars will reach from continent to continent and neighborhood to neighborhood. The terrorists won't make peace with the horrorists. Who would enforce it at any price? Who keep trying to impose harmony between oppressed and oppressor with fear and firepower. Gas prices will rise with global temperatures and tides. Acid rains will fall with the last of the redwoods. Computer systems will crash and stock markets until one day everyone has cancer, or else nothing will happen at all. Business will continue as usual. Prison guards pace concrete tombs. Psychiatrists contemplate madness. Demons glare from the eyes of ministers. Consumers bought and sold in the marketplace. It's after the end of the world, whispers the homeless. Well, there yet. Others, mysterious and knowing, who have held themselves aloof from the discussion until now, finally interject, what world? Surf's up, that's surf with an S. Oppression isn't a competition on a scale. One person's entire family, save 2 or 3, was wiped out in the Holocaust. Another suffered 300 years of slavery. Another lives under Israeli occupation. Another's grandmother was dragged off by the Japanese to be a sex slave. Another's people barely survived the Bengal famine. Another is harassed and hounded by immigration authorities. Another had her dad get thrown into H Block in the 80s and suffer torture. Another grew up in a shack on a reservation. Another grew up in a shack in Appalachia and got thrown out for being trans. It's not a question of who's more fucked. Everybody is fucked in some way. It's a question of getting together and ending fuckery, especially since all the fuckery of the last few hundred years has been caused by people whose numbers wouldn't even fill a stadium. And this is a poem from my friend, the terrific poet Dennis Cruz, inspired by his book, The Beast Is We. Poem for Dennis Cruz. I saw a black tarantula crawling out from under the flower pots. Have you ever seen one? They are not spiders. They are black and furry and beautiful because when ugliness and wickedness are as deep as existence, when they come down from eternity, they have a perfection all their own. I watched this beast and said to myself, how beautiful you are with your long strangler's paws, your fine corset of dusky velvet, your furry belly, your fabulous jaws. It was when a big drop of poison fell. That's how you were born. And because you are perfect, I am going to take my revenge on you, filthy insect. I've known too many victims and I have a debt to pay. And just imagine, the tarantula understood me. He was paralyzed, befuddled by his destiny. He looked around stupidly for a way out, but for him, there was no way. My eyes hypnotized him. I was so sure he wouldn't go away that I went back to the kitchen for the hammer. It gave me pleasure to swing the hammer on the black beast, and I laughed as though I'd had one drink too many. I crushed the velvet tarantula with one blow, crack. That's what you've got to do from time to time in this world, or the air would be unbreathable. Bela Lugosi's accomplishments. He backed the communist revolution of Hungary 1919, but was never blacklisted in Hollywood. He spoke beast language in Murders in the Rue Morgue horror movie 30 years before Michael McClure. He starred in a Broadway show and spoke his lines phonetically to acclaim. The critics couldn't tell. World War I wound, painkiller, morphine addiction, 40 years duration. He cleaned up and died sober. 1968, I worked as movie extra Universal Pictures lot of monster movie fame. One night, dreamt I met him on the set. Mr. Lugosi, I said, you taught me how to behave with dignity. He smiled. Home for Zoe Tamerlis. Now, Zoe Tamerlis was somebody that I knew in anarchist circles on the Lower East Side in the 70s and 80s. And I think Puma knew her too, or knew of her, may have crossed paths with her. Home for Zoe Tamerlis. Cats leap across my heart when I see your full red lips, and the glassy water breaks with white sparks, scattering your words in all directions. Zoe, your crowned scalp with inky black hair, a halo of dawn over the urban river's skyline. Tonight, you see through my words, Zoe of twilight ruby, and I sleep through your breath, Zoe of black leather. I dream through your tattooed arms, Zoe of a desert where the hawks turn blue, and I walk in your palm of Mount Meru, Zoe of obsidian in the coup d'etat, and I'm lost in your solar breast, the flares made fertile, Zoe in the night of honeysuckle, Zoe of Crystal Palace, Zoe of Mongolian steppes covered with gold pugarans, Zoe of boots under a red brick tenement. Anarchists are plotting our liberation. Zoe of dolphin spume, Zoe of lava made helium. Zoe. And I will end with Comrade. I like to read and write in coffee shops, old habit, escape from noisy lodgings of bygone days. I share the place with the gentrified locals, fixated on glowing screens if alone, yakking about what's cool if with others, talking about dreams of screenplays and auditions with the eagerness of youthful promise. They pay me no mind, the old fellow in threadbare clothes, scribbling in a pocket notebook with a fountain pen. The young barista, pierced, braided, tattooed, took the money and handed me a coffee. As we made the exchange, I said cheerily, "Thanks, comrade." Leaning in and glancing side to side conspiratorially, the barista whispered back, "How did you know I was a communist?" Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for such a vibrant, compassionate, provocative reading. You see so much, and you empathize with those who are not seen by much of the world. And you always have such a love of the working class, and also for the different ethnic and racial groups around the world. And there's an ethical integrity in your work, which I have always admired. What do you see the poet's role in a society of ours today, with all the division in the political world?
Well, the poet today, I think that the poet has to speak their own truth, whatever that truth might be, and tell us what we are seeing, how it affects them. Because one of what makes poetry relatable to other people is we all experience what's happening in our environment. We respond in different ways, and I think the only advantage that poets have that other ordinary people don't have is that they are able to articulate what these feelings are in language that resonates with others. And so it seems to me that we poets should speak our truth so that others can hear it, whether they agree with it or not.
Well, we probably talked about this before, but could you give me just a few of your top films and just talk a little bit about one or two of them of all time?
There's we're both cinephiles, so that, as you know, that's like we've seen thousands of movies, and my top films, change depending on my mood or what's happening. But lately, I reviewed a movie called The Train with Burt Lancaster and Paul Scofield. And the premise of this, it was a John Frankenheimer movie, and it takes place during World War II at the time of Nazi occupation. And what has happened is Paul Scofield is a Nazi officer, and he's stealing all of this valuable French artwork, and it's all being put on this train. And in the meantime, Burt Lancaster works for the railroad, but he's also part of the resistance. And his assignment is to keep these paintings from reaching Germany. So it's basically, and a lot of people get killed in the process. So the catharsis of the movie is art worth sacrificing your life for? And that's particularly now. I mean, how long are we going to be able to speak our truth before censorship falls on us and we're punished for it? What are the risks? What risk are we willing to take for our art? So that's one movie that I really liked recently. And of course, along the same lines, another favorite is Rome, Open City by Roberto Rossellini, the great neorealist film, and that's also a movie of resistance that involves a bunch of different people, from communist partisans to devout Roman Catholic priests, but they are all united in resisting the Nazi tyranny that everybody is suffering under. So those are like two movies that I really like a lot of recent times that I've recently.
So I love Rossellini, and Frankenheimer was great too. Remember that scene in the Rome Open City? When did that was shot during the war, I believe.
Yeah, it was 1945.
Yeah, and then she's running after the man, and then she gets shot and she's laying there in the street, and there was nobody. Your heart just goes out to her. She's so beautiful in death, even, and she was so earthy, and there's nobody around like her anymore, Anna Mignani. Yeah. But you mentioned the first one, the train, and wasn't there a picture that Jean Gabin played a engineer, trained engineer?
Yeah, La Bête Humaine, the human beast. Yeah,
was that directed by Renoir?
That's by Renoir. Yeah.
Well, one of Renoir's, excuse me, themes was brotherhood, and I see that in you too. But I love those films that you mentioned. Did you ever see La Talente? I'm sure you have.
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful movie. Yeah, and it's tragic that the filmmaker who made that, he lived a short life. He died of tuberculosis.
Yeah, well, I read where he was, laying on some kind of a wheelchair, a reclining wheelchair or something. At the end of directing that picture, he was sick, and he made some fabulous shorts too. But I remember, excuse me, Truffaut saying that he saw that picture when he was 14, and he just flipped out and said, "What an amazing filmmaker!" And you can go from La Talente, 1934, to The New Wave.
Oh yeah,
that same color, that same natural lighting. Boris Kaufman shot that, and then, as you know, he shot On the Waterfront. But it's one of my favorite films. As Rome, Open City. I always sometimes debate in my own mind to put in my top 10 films of all time, Rome, Open City, or Bicycle Thieves. I love both of those pictures.
Yeah, me too. Well, going back to Rome, Open City for a moment, one of the significant lines in the movie that I always remember is, it's just shortly before the priest is executed, and he's receiving the last rites from another priest, and the priest is counseling, have courage, Father. And the priest, whose life is going to end shortly, is not worried, and he said, dying well is easy, living well is hard.
That's beautiful. Well, okay, I know you worked for many years at Beyond Broke, which I'm very grateful for all the great work you did there. What is a day like for you right now in this time of your life? What do you do in a day?
Well, I've been doing a lot of freelance editing, and I have been writing poetry every day. Puma and I both belong to a group called Daily Write, and we get a new series of prompts every week and a new partner every week. So that keeps me writing. So I've been writing, I've been doing freelance editing, and I've been co-editing some anthologies with S.A. Griffin. You're in the latest one, Sparring Artist #2, as is Puma. And we had the first reading at Beyond Baroque last Friday, the first publication reading. And the last publication reading will be on May 5th in New York City. And Puma is going to be part of that reading with all of the other New York contributors who will be around at that time.
Well, that's great. You've given so much to poetry. Could you just take one poet in the past that you really love and that you gain nourishment from and inspiration from?
Well, this may sound unusual, but actually I gain a lot of inspiration from Emily Dickinson. I more and more, as time has gone by, I have come to really appreciate the crypticness of some of her poems and the elusiveness. I mean, they refer to specific things, but they resonate so deeply. And the fact that she was writing entirely from her very limited experience. I mean, what we know of the biography is she rarely left the house and grew up in this very stifling atmosphere, and yet her sensibility was such that she could make poetry even under those restricted circumstances. And she had her imagination was unfettered.
Well, what she write, like collected poems, 1,789 poems?
Yeah, something like that.
I always loved her strength of line and use of metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
There was a film, I don't know what, Terrence Davies, I believe, a quiet.
Oh, yeah.
A Quiet Voice or something like that. I forget, but Terrence Davies, he's a wonderful filmmaker too. I believe it was him.
It was him. Yeah, it was him. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, he was a great filmmaker too. It is. But once again, Richard Modiano, I want to thank you not only for your wonderful poetry, but for how much you've given to the community. I always say poetry is grace and grace is giving. And you've given a tremendous amount and you still continue. And you're an inspiration to me. And I'm glad to know you as a friend. So thank you once again, Richard Modiano.
Well, thank you, Harry, for those kind words. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Puma, you want to come on the screen now? Puma,
Right.
Hello, Puma. Puma Perl is a poet, writer, and performer, and the author of 2 chapbooks, Ruby True and Belinda and Her Friends, and 3 full-length poetry collections, Knuckle Tattoos, Retrograde, Great Weather for Media, and Birthdays Before and After, Beyond Broke Books, and is currently at work on a 6th collection to be published by Punk Hostage Press. She is frontwoman and lyricist for the Puma Perl Band, which brings spoken word together with rock and roll and has performed together since 2012. She's received 4 awards from the New York Press Association in recognition of her journalism and was a recipient of the 2016 Acker Awards in the category of writing. Here's a marvelous poet, Puma Perl.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with In the Stars. And thank you for having me again. In the Stars. Remember when the stars still mattered? Hovering above while we chased fireflies, jars filled with dreams, wishes, and glitter. On Tuesday nights, we gathered on rooftops. We could see Coney Island. We could see the whole world as we gazed up at the fireworks, the lights brighter than the constellations. In my building today, you're not allowed on the roof. And the playground is sinking, and developers and towers told my sunrise. The moon no longer rests on the bridge. Sometimes there are fireworks on the river, but mostly just headlights and flashlights, street lights, strobe lights, and Christmas lights still flashing in July tenement building windows. Remember when all that mattered was the stars. This is called Shapes in the Clouds. I've never really noticed clouds before, too preoccupied with Brooklyn cracks, always looking down and never up. When I was 14, I lied about my age and got a job as a camp counselor somewhere in upstate New York. You could see stars and moons and clouds, but I might never have noticed them, if not for Wayne, the best looking of what they called the kitchen boys. Black kids from the Bronx, hired for the summer, always referred to as the kitchen boys, an unsurprising term employed by middle-class Jewish liberal racists. One evening after dinner, feeling alienated beneath the weight of pretending to be older than I was and of never being who I was, which was how I felt all the time anyway, I took a walk by myself and came upon Wayne sitting in a chair outside his quarters. He was looking up at the clouds, and he told me it relaxed his mind. He said he even watched clouds from his Bronx rooftop, although he never saw many stars. I pulled up a chair and listened as he pointed out the shapes of the clouds, seashells and flowers and faces and cats and dogs, and I started to see the stories he told. We sat there quietly for a spell. It was the first time that summer I felt peaceful. We liked each other, and we sometimes danced in the rec room where everyone hung out at night. During a slow dance, he closed his eyes, and that ended my career as a camp counselor in upstate New York. but initiated a lifetime of looking up at the sky instead of down at my feet. In the wilderness, I had a few outdoorsy years in my late teens and 20s. We loved to roam Prospect Park to midnight, pitch black, easy to get lost. The pot and acid increased our excitement. Some cross-country trips, climbing mountains in the Rockies, up and down the Grand Canyon, sleeping under New Mexico stars or in tents, pitched randomly off the main roads. A year living upstate, 115 acres in a crumbling house, all for $95 a month due to some family feuds. 4 seasons spent there. Grew a few tomatoes, bought a pig named Portia, and it was time to go back to the civilization of the Lower East Side, 1975. I did not stay around to eat any part of Portia. My wilderness does not extend far past my mind. I get lost in Central Park and always circle around, unable to find the place I want to exit, and several times I've grabbed a cab to get to my car or subway station. My wilderness is made up of torn-up streets, the drilling, the dirt, the East River Park destruction, trees falling, grass turned to concrete, steel fences. My wilderness is my dog playing in the handball court behind the sign that says no pets. The half-mile walk to Trader Joe or the nearest train, the scaffolding where we used to sit, the guy who punched me in the head before hundreds of other women also got punched in the head. That's the kind of pioneer I have become. My wilderness is a sliver of sunshine between buildings. The full moon crossing Houston Street, the rats ruffling through black bags of garbage in the schoolyards, the creatures of my dog hunts beneath the ferry, strangers ringing bells at 3 a.m. My wilderness is the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, Coney Island, Yankee Stadium, anywhere I cross a bridge in the wilderness of the still raging New York City. So I just need to adjust myself a little and be a little higher. Okay. Here we go. Domino nights. On Water Street, scaffolds envelop the buildings. Wire screens surround the benches. Iron fences line the streets. You must walk a hot summer block in either direction to cross. To the east, construction continues. To the west, trucks sit, waiting. Approaching or leaving, it feels like a detention center without passports or means of escape. Late nights on Water Street, beneath the scaffolding, behind the steaming sidewalks and the screens and the fences, the men set up their dominoes table and their friends watch them play, awaiting their turns. We wave on the way to walk our dogs or when returning home in the humid air. There are no passers-by on Water Street. No loitering without intent or purpose. But if there were, I would reply to the questions they might ask, had they existed. Why, they might wonder, did the men sit at a bridge table in the stifling heat, beneath scaffolds, behind screens and fences? Surely there are air-conditioned apartments where they might socialize and yell, "Capicu," because I would answer, it is our street. This is our Lower East Side air that we breathe. This is our space where neighbors smile as they pass by and call out, "Otra vez." You still at it as time slowly propels us closer to wherever we are headed. But until we get there, the table is set for another night of apocalyptic dominoes. Unmoored, As the city spins, I am increasingly confused by the streets I once walked, the buildings where I lived, no longer able to see into the past or imagine the future. I leave the house each morning with a dog, unpaved gutters, fenced-in sidewalks, shuttered stores. Occasionally, we play ball in the park. Mostly we walk a block or two and go home. Today, I thought about a muffin, but the wind chilled me, and the big dogs were barking, and all we wanted was to go back upstairs, me and my dog, attached to one another, unmoored in the world. All through the night, this was written yesterday, immediately after learning of our loss of the wonderful drummer and kind human being, Clem Burke. And it's called All Through the Night. How is it possible to sleep peacefully in my bunker as battles rage on? Wartime world filled with losses today. We keep trying, some days easier than others. Today is a hard one. The world's economy is tanking and Clem Burke has died. I am equally upset about both, although emotions run higher for Clem, his kindness rocking as hard as his drum kit. I used to love to watch him play, smiling, sweating, and twirling his sticks, and was lucky enough to have known him a bit. He was still that kid who opened side doors to let people into shows before the after, when everything rolled as hard as it rocked and lives lived unlocked, far away from whatever it is that we are now. Some of us go on, some of us fall. And the only sure thing is that the moon will rise tonight and probably sleep will come, a brief respite from whatever tomorrow has in store. Good night, room. It was too early to go to sleep, but the purple curtains blowing open in the breeze, a sliver of river and sky peeking through, the dimming lights creating shadows across the bed, the black silk mask on the pillow, and the small dog curled up on her red blanket convinced me to put my book away, shut my eyes, and dream. Living on lies and concrete. My windows overlook cranes and wasteland. Once there was a park. The buildings across the river stole my sunrise. I stare at the ceiling from the bed. I am thankful that I have a bed and my rent is paid. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We live on the LES of lies and concrete. I am thankful for the elevator. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I say if it is waiting unbroken. God damn it to hell, I say when it's stuck, and then I kick the wall and hurt my foot and scare the dog. Another night falls, and I count my blessings as I lie awake at 3:30 a.m., and it's sort of raining, but not enough to provide comfort. And I turn the fan off, turn the air conditioner on, and then I do it in reverse and back around. Thank you. Thank you for my fan and my air conditioner and the small black dog asleep on her bed, for my apartment that I can almost afford, for my 2 kids who usually don't hate me. The morning begins and I don't write a poem and I don't exercise except for my walk with the dog. I don't eat a healthy breakfast except for the egg, but I water a plant whose eyes I've been avoiding for several days, so I guess that counts for something. My plant is alive and my kids don't hate me today. And my dog chased the ball and I ate food and I live somewhere. And I have a bed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dreaming of a caressing sky. Everything is breaking. My favorite jeans are coming apart at the seams. I slipped my arm through my Paige thermal and the wristband fell off. My computer made a sort of buzzing sound that sends you running from the room. A corroded wire in a cable caused my brakes to fail while driving. And don't get me started about my arthritic knees, the nerves in my ankles, the never-ending dental issues, the shitty insurance, and acupuncturists who assess through text messaging. The buildings block my sunset. The park is in ruins, but at least we still have the sky. Okay, I guess I'll do one closing one, which is called appropriately enough for Richard to hear Escape from Gravesend. Bukowski, DePrima, Ferlinghetti, Coltrane. Unlike my real life loves, you never let me down. And in return, I've not been fickle or unfaithful. Our relationships are perfect, free of demands and expectations. You don't give me money or remember my name, but you're forever present, dead or alive, always prepared to comfort, inspire, engage, or enrage, to demand a revolution of the soul. Even if I recall nothing else when they yank the white sheet over my head, I'll be listening to a love supreme, reading a revolutionary letter, keeping Coney Island on my mind, Bukowski's bluebird soul fluttering because she gets so alone. No matter if friends bear witness or have stories to tell, I keep my first loves, that turquoise blue radio alongside my bed, suddenly giving a 12-year-old me the gift of Billy singing Willow Weep for me as I restlessly twist the dial, emptiness fueling insomnia that will grow into a beautiful void someday with jazz and poetry books purchased because of the Ferlinghetti cover or that Stan Getz blue. I miss those days of records and bookstores and solitary subway rides to West 4th Street. Adventure, illumination, joining 2 a.m. lost souls passing my room above the F train. Humming subways, promising places to go, and finally I get the fuck out of Gravesend with its good pizza, cages of McDonald Avenue, chickens awaiting slaughter, a street smelling of blood, death, car wrecks, and maybe a little bit of hope trickling down from the elevated tracks. Thank you.
Thank you, Puma. I love your journey. I love to listen to you, and I see what you see. You see the extraordinary and the ordinary, and it's always so personal, and you have such a great sense of place, and you're full of gratitude, and you see the brokenness and the goodness in life, and you continue. I was in New York City. I started writing in 1966. I lived on 25th and 10th in a 5-floor walk-up, 3.5-room flat, a bathtub in the kitchen. I would get up sometimes 4 a.m. and walk to the village, and it'd be lightly raining, and I would write. And so I empathize. I just love hearing you talk about what you see and you experience. What causes you to write a poem?
Well, like Richard said, we're in this daily write group. So that causes me to write a poem these days. I'm going to do it every morning, They used to be that same inspiration that caused you to leave your apartment at 4 a.m. and walk restlessly. And I would see things and I'd stop and I'd write these notes. I have to get this down. And now I feel like if I waited for inspiration to strike me, I might not do anything. So I just do it. Now, sometimes there is something like yesterday, as I mentioned when I introduced that poem, when Clem Burke died. I actually didn't say I'm going to write a poem about Clem. It's just kind of what happened. So that was the inspiration, Do
you carry a notebook with you when you walk?
No. But I'll sometimes type into the notes on my phone.
And where do you live? I mean, you were talking about the Lower East Side. Do you live in the Lower East Side?
Yes, I live on the Lower East Side as opposed to living in the East Village. I live all the way down and all the way east.
Well, I always enjoy your writing. What does what do you think the role of the poet is in terms of living in such a divisive political society we live in today? Does one have to be political, or can one just be a personal poet?
I don't think one has to be political in a predetermined way. And not all poets may agree with what I think about the world, you know what I mean? So I would say, as Richard just replied, we have the opportunity to speak the truth, our truth, whatever we see, but we also have an even greater opportunity because as poets, we get to perform. You know, as a writer, as a prose writer or an essayist or a novelist, you have to get published. Someone has to approve your work and publish you usually. If you're a playwright, you have to get that play mounted. But a poet can go out and do their poetry on the street corner if they want to. Or on Zoom, or in many, many, many different types of venues. So we have so many opportunities to speak our truth that other writers may not have.
Well, you know, here in LA, we have Beyond Broke. We have Susan Hayden's Library Go Reading Series.
Yeah.
And we have our show Zoom, among many others. What is a place in New York City that you enjoy reading at in our time? It used to be, when I was there in the late 60s, it was St. Mark's Place, St. Mark's Church. Go ahead. I didn't mean to go on, but what is the place?
That's okay. Well, for one thing, let me say that I think I gave you an old bio because what I've been doing recently, most of the time, is being a front woman for my band, and we have a new album out called Under Tenement Sky. So a lot of what I do is performing with the band. It's spoken word with the band. So in terms of where I like to read poetry, I'm fortunate to get a lot of opportunities, but I don't have a place that's home like the Bowery Poetry Club was. I never really felt that accepted at the St. Mark's Church. You know, all of these years, I've never read on New Year's Day, you know that. But I've done the alternative New Year's Day. But the Bowery Poetry Club was kind of like a CBGB's of poetry. There was something for everybody. 7 days a week, almost 24 hours. And then unfortunately, it became something else.
And where is a place that you have performed your music, your band, recently in New York City?
Well, we have regular shows at the 11th Street Bar, which is a place that we like. We just performed at a place, the Parkside Lounge on Houston Street. Things have changed and different groups have moved in and venues have had to make certain decisions based on finances and the times. Like everything changed after COVID. I know Beyond Baroque and Library Girl have been there like forever. I've read it, both of them, as far back as maybe 15 years ago. But I used to have a regular show at the Bowery Electric, for instance, and it's not a place that I fit in with anymore. You know, it's changed. So, you know, sometimes you have to create your own venues.
Well, you mentioned in one poem, Ferlinghetti, Hart Crane, among others. Who's a poet that has, from the past, that has been interesting to you lately, that you find nourishment from?
I tend to very often revisit the big poets because that group of poets and jazz musicians and artists is what engaged me when I was very, very young. I can't tell you quite how that happened. I could tell you that the first book I ever bought was Ferlinghetti's Coney Island of the Mind. And why? Because I liked the cover and I thought it was going to be about Coney Island. You know? But recently I pull out Diane DePrima's Revolutionary Letters, and I've incorporated them into some readings. And sometimes I go back further to some of the poets I was exposed to when I was a kid. You know, a kid, what they give you in school is usually like about death and graveyards, you know, and you have to memorize it. So, they don't really encourage poetry, but I was able to learn about a few poets like Edgar Allan Poe. that I will sometimes go back and read his poems and short stories.
Well, as you know, Edgar Allan Poe influences symbolists, and they influence Eliot, among others. But Richard, why don't you come on, and you and I and Puma can talk for a little while. So, Puma, since you just finished, why don't you say a few words about what Richard wrote today? And then after you finish, Richard, say a few things about Puma.
Sure.
Puma?
Okay, well, Richard is, of course, an excellent writer, and I love the way he integrated the Japanese and the culture. Is what Richard's poetry is always so multicultural, and I also like there was one, and I wish I could quote from it, which I can, but there was one that you wrote really like stuck it to the government and wanted. I think it was the last one. I'm not sure, but I really liked the language in that one. It was a great reading. It held my attention. I'm pointing that out because I'm so ADD'd out all the time.
Well, listening to Puma's set today, it made me tremendously nostalgic for New York City, and to hear the echoes of the past and how it is now. I mean, the last time I was there, I lived in New York from 74 to 89, and I had many an adventure on the Lower East Side during those decades. And so hearing Puma's set, and of course hearing the authentic voice of the city that she channels so wonderfully. And by the way, her spoken word piece, CD, LP, and downloadable from Bandcamp, Under Tenement Skies, is really excellent. I recommend it to everybody. I think it's great. It's like perfect fusion of spoken word and music. So it's really beautiful. But, otherwise, Puma writes from her own experience, and she makes her experience universal through her language. So which is the real accomplishment that poets have. I mean, the best poets do that. She's one of the best in my view.
I agree. Both of you are great. And how did you two come to meet?
Let's see. I think it was when I was still director of Beyond Baroque. Puma sent me an email message because she was going to be reading there as part of an anthology put out by Great Weather for Media. And she wrote and said, "Can you help me get a writer's grant?" And I said, "Sure." So, because you had to have a sponsorship to get a poets and writers grant. So that's how we met through email. And then when she was there, when she showed up in person, when I saw her, I had the feeling that we may have met before, crossed paths before, back in New York City, which it could have been at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe or at some other reading or at something more unsavory even.
Probably.
We won't go into that.
Is that your memory, Puma, how you two met?
Well, I know it had to do with Beyond Baroque. I know I met Richard at Beyond Baroque personally the first time. I don't recall the particular email, but I wouldn't say that didn't happen. It probably did.
Well, one thing I love about Puma, among others, is the voice. You're the voice of New York City. You really are.
Mm-hmm.
You just.
Well, I mean, at one point, we really thought that maybe Beyond Baroque would have kind of an East Coast base too. It was something that was like a good dream to happen, and COVID came in, and COVID just squashed a lot of dreams.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, but I want to add that Puma's New York voice is the street voice. It's not the voice of the real estate barons or the moguls of New York City, who we've had enough of. I mean, they don't represent the people, but.
You talked. Oh, go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
I was going to say no, but I was going to say that what Puma writes about are what the human beings that walk the streets experience, not what somebody in some air-conditioned office suite experiences, or some guy on the floor of the stock exchange is thinking about his next 500 million. This is the voice of the people, if I can put that spin on it.
Well, the other thing that I miss about living in New York City and also in LA, living out here at MPTF, I love it here, but that walking down the street and the multi-ethnic urban stimuli, all the different families, but we all are where we are today. And so I want to thank you once again, Richard Modiano and Puma Perl. You both, with your knowledge and with your great writing, you always give me a sense of exaltation. And there's music in both of your hearts, and the compassion that you have for other people is just, supreme. So thank you. And here's our wonderful gift back, our director back from Europe, Jennifer Clymer. And thank you, Jennifer Clymer. But let me, before we go on, let me just say, next Tuesday, we have the superb poets, Rich Ferguson and Kathleen Florence with us. So that'll be a fabulous reading. Jennifer?
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It was wonderful to come back to the office and have this be one of the first things that greets me from the glorious honeymoon that we got to take. So we'll see you back here next week, and stay tuned right now for Cinephiles.